Welcome to the podcast, which is all about the world of direct response. Are we on the air? I'm your host, Sean Wilsey, and for over 30 years I've hosted shows on cable shopping networks, and now I want to be your guide into this world as we look at the ever-changing nature of the industry. Industries, plural, supposed to be. Anyway, main focus today, cable shopping, television shopping, and a show that, man, I tell you, I never, ever thought I would be doing based on what was just announced of June 13th of 2024. And I'm telling you, this one shocked me. I'll play the audio and then you'll understand of what I speak. So let's begin just by playing some audio from QVC on June 13th, 2024. They had just wrapped up a sell.
As we had said before,
Let me explain, I guess. We'll start this again. They had just concluded a sell, Skechers, one of their favorite products there, and Mary Beth Roe was the host. And so the voice you're going to hear is that of Mary Beth Roe.
as we had said before, it's Founders Day, so QVC started 38 years ago today. And I have been here pretty much almost the whole time. Been here actually 37 years or so. And so it was a hard decision, but I decided I needed to retire. Don't panic. I was going to retire in August. Now QVC has talked me into staying till March. And then I said, no, after that, I'm gone. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know I'm still going to be here then for another 8-9 months. And I've just loved it. I mean, what could a girl ask for more than just to have such an incredible career and job? And you as viewers are just, you're my other family, and the people I work with here are my other family as well. So just wanted y'all to know, because it's kind of the cat's getting out of the bag, and so we felt like instead of you finding out some way you shouldn't, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that's what's going to happen. And
okay, I'll tell you how I found out, and I was blindsided by this. I was going on YouTube. And by the way, I will link that clip in the show notes. I cannot take ownership of that. In fact, let me explain who posted that and how I found out, because I was just going on YouTube. I think I was going to upload some clips of my own. I've been trying to update with some old television shopping clips. When you first load YouTube, it gives you suggestions. And had I not been sitting down, I would have fallen over when I saw the YouTube posting, Mary Beth Roe announces her retirement, because, I never saw that coming. Chuck Snitchler is the gentleman who posted that. He's got his own great archive of this industry, and a fantastic guy that I've known a lot of years. And so he had posted that. Mary Beth Roe announces her retirement from QVC, and I had not heard any rumors or rumblings, so that is how I found out. And again, I will post a link in my show notes to his video. But it brings up the question, because there has been a lot of coming and going lately, and one of the questions that people always ask is, why do hosts leave? Why does a certain show host who's been with a network forever leave? Now, Mary Beth Roe, by the way, didn't just, she was not one of the founders of QVC. She was there a very long time, as she mentioned. She was actually got her career started at CVN, the cable value network in Minneapolis. And then when QVC bought CVN and flipped them off the air, when the stations, the cable systems that still had CVN, because a lot of them, Minneapolis included, once QVC bought CVN, I think a lot of the contracts were rewritten early, and so CVN was actually off the air in Minneapolis months before its actual last day in operation. They'd already flipped the switch to QVC. But for the cable systems that did have CVN till the very end and were making that switch to QVC when they pulled the plug on CVN, they already had Mary Beth Roe flown out there, so she was the first host. So as a transition from CVN to QVC, the first host that the CVN viewers would have seen was Mary Beth Roe, now at QVC. But again, going back to the question, why do hosts leave? What happens when a host leaves? Because there are many reasons why hosts could leave. Sometimes, as in Mary Beth's case, it is of her choosing. Sometimes it is not of the host's choosing, which have been publicized many times. Most recently, many of you, in fact, I think we discussed it on the show here. Shannon Smith, the Shannons, there were two Shannons at HSN, were let go. At the same time, and this was cost cutting simply by Q-Rate's part. Carolyn Gracie and Dan Hughes were shown the door from QVC. And so sometimes it's well publicized. That's why I bring that up. I will never discuss a host departure in this format, even if I know the truth, because many times there's things that are signed, paperwork that is signed, and they can't discuss it. I cannot. It's funny, when I left Shop NBC, there were rumors on the internet both ways that I had quit and that I was fired. And again, the whole story can never come out because there's things that are signed that just I can't discuss it. And so in a lot of cases, that's what happens. I will say this: I was not fired. I can safely say that. I have never been fired from a job in my life, so that's I have to laugh when I see people posting, Sean Wilsey was fired. Anyway, but hosts do come and go. And there is a revolving door, it seems sometimes, for hosts. A host will leave one network simply to go to another. In many cases, again, by their own choosing. They just decide, you know what, I think there might be greener pastures somewhere else, and so they head off somewhere else to another network. Now, in this day and age where there are fewer networks than there once were, it is a little bit more difficult to jump ship like that. For those that don't know, again, speaking of hosts leaving, and on one of my very early podcasts, when we had a discussion of HSN, one of the things that was brought up was how CVN, Cable Value Network, before they started, they poached about 6 or 7 of HSN's strongest hosts, leaving them with no one. Because if you do decide that you're going to another network, usually you are shown the door right then and there. At least that's the way it used to be. These days, there are situations where hosts have been allowed to stay, to say goodbye, to do whatever. One of the most infamous, I guess, departures ever, and I wish I had audio of this, was when Karen Connolly left Shop NBC. She was going to go across town, and a lot of hosts did wind up leaving Shop NBC to go across town to start up a network called WSS, Worldwide Shopping Source, which if you blinked, you missed it. And she just signed off one show by basically announcing on air that she was quitting and said, well, thank you for tuning in today. I'll see you in 6 months. Boom, done. And that was a shock to anyone and everyone there. And she did turn up 6 months later at WSS. And most of the hosts that did leave that network to go across town were not allowed a goodbye show. It was just, oh, okay, you're going to go across town? Well, goodbye. You've had your last day here. And that's usually the way it is. Many of you might remember back some years ago when Star Jones was on The View, and she basically announced on air that she was quitting. Well, Barbara Walters, who was in charge of it at the time, the very next day said, no, she's done now. Management's always nervous what you might do if you are going to be quitting, if you're going to be leaving. Are you going to be taking secrets with you? Are you going to say something on air that you shouldn't? And so many times if a host quits, that is just it. It's like, boom, done. However, it's the same thing if you're fired. If you are fired, then you're shown the door then and there, which is why Carolyn and Dan and the Shannons, never got a chance to really say goodbye to their viewers because they were, and I shouldn't say they were fired, it was part of a corporate layoffs, and so they by no means were fired because of anything that they did. In that case, was a corporate layoff. Now, a host job is ultimately sales, and if the sales aren't coming, then yes, I do know of cases where hosts have been shown the door because at the end of the day, it's about sales and you being responsible for those sales. And a host can always point the finger at a producer. A producer will point the finger at the host if the sales weren't there. They'll both point fingers at the buyers. The buyers will point fingers at the host. And there are always a lot of reasons why the sales might not be there. But that is one of the reasons why a host might suddenly no longer appear on your favorite shopping network. It could simply be their sales weren't there. Now, there's always the long list of things that human resources department is going to have on their radar, because just because you're on-air talent doesn't mean that you are somehow above the law, shall we say. And many people remember some years ago, Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose, a whole long list of legendary television personalities were shown the door for, let's just say, bad behavior at work. So you always have to be conscious of that, and that is something else that always has to be on their radar. I do find it interesting now, though, as we are in a time where salaries are changing in the industry, and I think that might be part of it, why you might have some hosts deciding, okay, it's time to call it a day and get out, because the pay is not what it once was. In the glory days of the industry, believe me, it was a very profitable career. And those days have changed, and they're not going to come back. New hosts are being hired at a fraction of what they would have been hired for, by and large, in a lot of cases in years past. So the salary is changing. And that's just the nature, again, of the industry. I do find it interesting when I go to the host pages on the different shopping networks. QVC, for instance. They have, let me add this up. There's 8, 16, 24, 27 hosts. Now, they're running a couple networks. 2 networks, one that are both live more often than not. And so they need all of these hosts. It's interesting when you look at their program guide how so many of their shows are becoming a lot more host-centric. In the earliest days of QVC, all of the shows were product-specific or theme-specific. So you would have, in fact, they had a rotating thing of 7 shows that they would rotate through, and then slowly it started becoming an hour of T-Fall, an hour of Bose, an hour of Levi's, and so it was always then it became brand-specific. Now, I'm looking at the program guide right now, and there's an hour of Lazy Boy. So there's still some of that. There's an hour of Quacker Factory, their popular fashion line. So there's still some of that, but it's not like it used to be. A lot more shows that are host-centric. What do I mean by that? I mean, for instance, especially on Fridays and Saturdays, which are 2 very big sale days. You have a show called Fry-Yay, Fashion Deals. You have an evening show called Fry-Yay with Alberti and Amy, I guess it must be. It's abbreviated here. On Saturday, they do a similar Saturday Morning Q, where it can be absolutely anything. They have their show now, Over 50 and Fabulous. That can be absolutely anything. So a lot more of the shows are now focused on the host and on the personality, and that it can be a game changer too, because now you have a lot more of the focus being directed towards that person and that face. So you need to have a strong, powerful personality that can also deliver sales. And that is ultimately going to be the sieve, if you will, I think. That some of the hosts will just fall right through the openings in the strainer, and others will stay on top and be fine. And it used to be the time of day was a good indication, the strength of a host. It's not even that so much anymore. Now, so many of the hosts, they float around. So you might have one in the evening, one in the morning. So that might settle out, I think, over time, especially when Mary Beth leaves, because she was always a very strong morning personality. And that's a lot of it, too. It's where do they fit? Mary Beth has a morning personality. You don't see her doing late at night. And that's always been the case. There's always been that person who was better off in the morning, some that were better off late at night. John Creeman's one of the all-time greats at Home Shopping Network. I don't think he ever did anything but nights. That was always his thing, even back at CVN. Shannon Smith, similar thing. Great personalities at night. In the morning, maybe not so much. It's no different than about 20 years ago, NBC had this great little ratings gimmick. We're going to have Jay Leno host the Today Show, and we're going to have Katie Couric host the Tonight Show. If you watch them, they were disasters. Absolutely awful. Their personalities just don't lend themselves to that type of programming. Going to the HSN host page, let's do the same thing. 6, 12, 18, 20 hosts for their one network, because they just have the one network that's live. The other is all pre-recorded. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't recognize a lot of these people. I do not know who some of these people are. Speculation purely on my part, but I have on very good authority that a lot of these new faces are being brought in at a fraction of the money that their new face would have been brought in at maybe 10 years ago. So there is a lot of cost cutting going on, and I hope that doesn't affect the quality of these hosts. I'm not going to judge them because, again, I don't recognize half these people. I don't know if they're any good or not. So hopefully they are bringing in. It does alarm me a little bit when you start looking at the bios on some of these people. It always used to be, if you looked at the bio of a host, many times broadcasting background, I mean specifically radio and some sort of sales. And now it's a lot of, I'm not going to name a name here, but where's this person from? She's from LA and she loves karaoke. Okay. That's nice for you. There's not a lot there in that profile that leads me to believe that you have a sales background or a lot of experience in broadcasting, but I could be wrong. The next one, actually, this next one absolutely says nothing about her background and where she's from. So that makes me a little nervous. And in fact, going back up just one more step here, because there were a couple other hosts that just recently left QVC. Thomas Anthony, TJ, who I would usually only see in pre-recorded segments for like 2 minutes. So I don't even know how much airtime he actually had. He has left. And then the other one who recently left, Stacy. What is Stacy about to do? Well, she's going to go on Real Housewives. Okay, just let that sit there. That's her next step. So it's the role of host has changed a lot, and this goes back again to why do hosts leave? Some just don't feel that they fit in anymore. I have had to reinvent myself 50 times over the years. Not every host is good at that, because as the demands of the job change, as different management comes in and they want different things from you, you have to adjust your personality to that. And many hosts have a very difficult time doing that. If you watch the video of my last show, or any of the shows, probably the last 3 years on Shop NBC, and some of that's on YouTube, I was a very different person than I am today at Shop LC, and that person is different than I was at Value Vision in 1992, and that person was different than the Sean that was at Shop NBC in 2000. Now, I've always been me, and I've always been real. It's just you have to have that ability to adapt your personality to, well, they want something more like this. Or, oh, no, they want something more like this. So you have to be able to adapt. And as the roles change, be able to adapt to that. And again, that's another reason why some hosts disappear. They can't adapt. There is a burnout factor on some people's parts. And they get burnt out. And they just can't do it anymore. It is, I don't want to say straining, but it does take a lot out of you mentally to do this and do it successfully. I can't just go home. When my shows end at 11 p.m., I can't just go home, and 'cause I don't get home till about midnight, and just go right to bed. My brain is still functioning. It takes about 2 hours for my brain to slow down to the point where I can even think about getting to sleep. So some people just can't handle that. I've had many people who have tried this job say to me, I don't know how you do it. I can't do it. And they say, and this is the best compliment, and you make it look so easy. Because if you do the job well, you do make it look easy, and it is not easy. There's a lot of multitasking. Let me go back to host websites, or Shopping Network websites. Shop HQ now. Again, only part-time. They live 16 hours a day, I think. They have the smallest group of hosts. There are literally 10 pictures on their website right now. 10 photos. That's it. 2 of the hosts are, well, one of the hosts is new, Hannah. She was most recently at Shop LC. She is now at Shop HQ. Charla, who had left and is now back, so she's there. I think, now that I think about it, Melissa is now the longest serving host there. I don't remember when she joined. She came from Shop at Home. And Daniel has come and gone a few times. Wow, none of the original host core that I was a part of are still there. That just kind of sent a chill up my spine. I'm just the original host core, for those that don't know, because again, Value Vision was spun off from CVN when CVN was shut down. Charla Rhines, but again, she had left and has now come back, so she was part of the original group. Carmela Richards, Karen Connolly, myself. Eddie Nelson, he was part of the original group, and I think he was there a year and a half. Susan Garrett, she was there about a year and a half. Skip was very early on. Skip Connolly, Karen's husband. He just recently retired. He was there a very long time. Oh my gosh, who else was part of that original core? This was so long ago. Wes McCoy. was part of the original group. His wife Pamela came later. He was part of the original group. Mike Sullivan, a local personality in the Twin Cities, who was there maybe 6 months. So Shannon Smith was part of the original group, and a woman by the name of Wendy T, who left to go do country singing. And she's amazing, absolutely amazing. So of that original group, there's nobody that has been there consistently that whole time. And Melissa, I think, is the veteran now. She would have been there the longest. So, again, it's a network that it's reinventing itself, and we're watching it happen now, live. And again, privately owned company now, so they don't need to reveal how they are doing. But again, that's a network that has had a revolving door of hosts. And again, without naming names, some of the hosts have quit. Many did when they started up WSS across town. I think Charlotte and I were the only two that didn't quit from that group. Or Bill Fahey might have stuck around too. I do know of hosts over the years that have been fired for various things. And I do know some that were part of corporate layoffs. And so I know hosts that fall into all of these buckets. So there's not one easy answer to why did my favorite host leave. I will say this. All the times that I've heard, well, that's it. That host has left the network. That network's done. No. The departure of one host has never, ever, and probably never will, made a network bleed money. Because that host left, and all of a sudden now we can't make up. We lost the viewership. We lost the sales. That's it. Every network has survived the loss of hosts. Shop NBC survived the loss of most of its hosts when they went across town. In fact, some of their strongest days came following that. So, yes, it is very possible to survive the departure of hosts. It's sad for the viewers because you do. And, I mean, Mary Beth, that was so sincere. You're a part of my extended family. When I had my last day on Shop NBC in my sign-off, I said something very similar because the viewers are like an extended family. So I know exactly where she's coming from. And it will be a very sad thing on her last day. But again, they survived the loss of Kathy Levin, of Lisa. They will survive the loss of Mary Beth. And someone else will come in. And I mean, it's probably at a fraction of the price. And so, anyway. So that is the long 20-minute answer to what happened to my favorite host. I hope it was interesting. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss a show. Plus, you can listen to the archive of past shows. I hope you'll check me out on X, Facebook, and YouTube at Sean Wilsey, and on Instagram at SWilsey. Thank you for downloading this edition of Are We on the Air?
Yes, I know, Travis. That's why we give such bargains.
Copyright 2024, King Bobby Productions, all rights reserved.